paradrama tales.
For 2 years, I paid my husband $700 monthly for rent, believing we were sharing costs equally. But, at a family, BBQ, his mother let it slip he owned the house. All along, I wasn't just his wife, I was his tenant, and he never told me. When Brian and I got married, we wanted to start fresh with everything. No baggage, no resentment, no blurred lines. He had just turned 33, I was 31, and we were full of plans, full of hope. So, when he told me he found us an apartment through a family friend, a great deal, I trusted him. It sounded perfect. Not too big, not too expensive, in a quiet neighborhood that felt safe and familiar. He even said we'd be helping someone he knew by keeping the unit in use. It all sounded so genuine. From the very beginning, we agreed to split everything 50-50, rent, utilities, groceries. We wanted to keep things equal so that money would never get between us. I respected that. Honestly, I love that about him. I've always been the kind of woman who pulls her own weight. I never wanted to depend on a man financially, and he said he didn't want me to feel that pressure either. So I sent him $700 every month, like clockwork. That was just for rent, utilities were separate, but that felt fair. And for a while, everything seemed fine, normal, stable. We had our little routines, weekend grocery runs, quiet coffee mornings, late-night movies on the couch. I thought we were building a partnership, laying bricks together side by side. Sure, the apartment had its quirks, outdated fix words, rees, creaky floors, but it felt like ours, like something we were sharing, paying for, maintaining together. A space we could one day look back on and say, that's where it all began. I never imagined, not for 1 second, that the person I was sharing my life with was quietly cashing my rent checks behind the scenes, that he was letting me play house while he pocketed the money month after month. Back then I thought transparency meant love. I thought fairness meant truth. But looking back now, I realize I was only seeing the part of the story he wanted me to see. It happened on a Sunday. Warm breeze, paper plates, the smell of grilled burgers in the air. We were at Brian's parents' house for a family BBQ, just another laid-back afternoon where everyone was laughing, kids were running around, and I was standing near the patio with a glass of lemonade in hand. That's when I heard it. His mother was talking to Brian's aunt just behind me near the cooler. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, honestly. I wish I hadn't heard a thing, but her voice was clear as day. It's nice getting rent from Brian's place. Smart of you two to keep it in the family. I froze. At first the words didn't even make sense. Brian's place. Rent. What was she talking about? My mind tried to rationalize it. Maybe she misspoke. Maybe it was about something else. But then I caught the knowing laugh between them. That shared look. The way her sister smirked and said, well, it's extra money for them either way. I didn't say anything right then. I just stood there still smiling on the outside while my stomach twisted into a knot. I replayed those words over and over again, like a broken record. Brian's place. Rent. Keep it in the family. That night back home, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, trying to remember every conversation Brian and I had about the apartment. Every time I asked him when the lease was up. Every time I sent him rent money through Venmo. Every time he told me it was from a friend of the family. And suddenly it all clicked. He wasn't just hiding a detail. He was hiding ownership. He let me believe I was splitting the cost of our life together, when in reality I was helping him pay off an asset he already owned. And not once in 2 years of marriage did he think I deserved to know the truth. It wasn't just a slip-up from his mom. It was a confession. And it was the first moment I realized I wasn't his partner. I was his tenant. I didn't wait long. The very next morning, I sat Brian down at the kitchen table, right there over lukewarm coffee, and I asked him, plain and simple, is your mom the owner of this apartment? He blinked, caught off guard, but only for a second. Then he let out a shallow sigh, leaned back in his chair, and said almost casually, yeah, she is. I'm on the deed too. No apology, no explanation. Just a flat fact, like he was telling me we were out of milk. I stared at him. My heart was pounding, but my voice stayed calm. Why didn't you ever tell me? I asked. I've been paying rent to you for 2 years, Brian. 2 years. His response. You never asked. Just like that. No remorse, no sense that something might have been wrong. Just a shrug and a deflection, as if the burden of honesty had somehow been my job all along. And then to make it worse, he said, we weren't overpaying or anything. The deal was good. You even said so. As if the price justified the secrecy. As if the number on the check mattered more than the silence behind it. That's when something inside me cracked. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was deeper than that. It was disbelief. The kind of numb, slow-breaking disappointment that makes you feel like a fool for ever believing you were safe. He didn't lie outright, no, but he let me live in a lie. He let me believe we were equals when he was quietly stacking the odds in his favor, cashing in every month on my trust. For 2 years, I thought I was building a life with someone who valued fairness, someone who believed in transparency and respect. But now, I realized I'd been renting more than a home. I'd been renting a version of our relationship that only existed in my head. And in that moment, sitting across from the man I married, I didn't feel like his wife. I felt like a stranger who just realized she'd been paying to stay. After that conversation, I couldn't stop replaying everything we'd ever said about keeping things equal. I used to admire how practical Brian was about finances, how we'd sit down like partners, plan the bills, split the costs evenly. We both worked full-time. We both contributed. It felt balanced, like we were building something side by side. But now, I saw it differently. He hadn't created equality, he'd created the illusion of it. I thought we were a team, but teams don't keep score in secret. Teams don't let one person believe they're carrying half the load, while the other one quietly profits. He never once told me, "Hey, this place is in my name." Never said, "You're helping me pay off a property I'll keep if we split." Never gave me the chance to say, "Then maybe I shouldn't be paying rent like a tenant." He just took every month, with a smile and a thank you. And what really eats at me is he probably thought this made him smart, that he was protecting his asset, that because he didn't overcharge me, he hadn't done anything wrong. But this isn't about price, it's about principle, it's about transparency. I've always believed that fairness isn't just about numbers, it's about honesty, about giving each other the full picture. Because how can I make decisions that affect us if I'm only getting half the truth? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I hadn't just been paying rent. I'd been buying into a fantasy, one where my husband and I were equals, one where we both had skin in the game. But in reality, he was playing a different game entirely, and I didn't even know I was on the board. And when I tried to explain how hurt I felt, not over the money, but over the deception, he looked at me like I was overreacting, like I was being emotional. Like, I should be grateful he gave me such a good deal. But that's the thing about illusions. Once the light hits them, they disappear. And all you're left with is what was really there the whole time. Something in me shifted that day. I wasn't angry yet, not the kind that explodes, but I was done. Done pretending this didn't matter. Done nodding along to an arrangement that only looked fair on paper. So the next time rent was due, I didn't send the transfer. I didn't bring it up gently or hide behind excuses. I just looked him in the eye and said, "I'm not paying rent anymore, not until we have a real conversation about what's fair." At first, Brian laughed. Literally laughed like I was being dramatic, like this was some kind of emotional phase I'd snap out of. He said, "You're making this into a bigger deal than it is," but I didn't budge. I told him I needed to understand why he thought it was okay to keep something so significant from me, why he thought it was acceptable to benefit from me financially without ever being honest about it. That's when his tone changed. He got defensive. Cold. He started pacing the room like I had just insulted his character. "You think I'm trying to screw you over?" he asked. I didn't lie. I just didn't advertise it. And then came the line that really hit me. Most wives would be happy to live in a place this cheap. Happy. As if my problem was with the square footage. As if this was about granite countertops or rent prices. He still didn't get it. Or maybe he didn't want to. Because if he admitted this was about trust, he'd have to admit he broke it. From that moment, the house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a contract I hadn't signed. Like I was walking through someone else's asset, someone else's investment, and every plate I washed, every rug I vacuumed, I was maintaining something that wasn't truly ours. He didn't try to fix it. He didn't say, "Let's talk this through." He just pulled away, started coming home late, acting like I was the one who had crossed a line. But the only line I crossed was the one between silence and self-respect. And once I crossed it, I knew there was no going back. You know what's strange? The apartment didn't change. The walls were still the same, off-white color. The creaky floorboard in the hallway still moaned every time I walked across it, and the smell of his cologne still lingered on the couch cushions. But everything felt hollow. We still lived together. We still brushed our teeth side by side. We still sat on the same couch watching the same shows. But I had never felt more alone in my life. He stopped looking at me the same way. Or maybe I stopped seeing him the same way. Either way, the silence between us got heavier. Not angry silence, worse. Indifferent silence. The kind where you can be sitting inches from someone and feel like they're miles away. I tried to talk to him again. I thought maybe, just maybe if I explained it better, if I laid it all out in calm, reasonable terms, he'd finally hear me. So I said, "This isn't just about money. It's about feeling deceived. I need to know we're equals in this marriage, not that I'm financing something I don't even own." He barely looked up from his phone, just said, "I think you're blowing this way out of proportion." And when I told a few people, my sister, a close friend, most of them were shocked. But when it came to his family, total silence, or worse, dismissal. His mother actually said, "Sweetheart, it's just rent. You two have a roof over your heads. Isn't that what matters?" That was the moment I realized I wasn't just fighting to be heard in my marriage. I was invisible to the people around him too. They saw him as the provider, the smart son investing in real estate. I was just the girl living in his asset. It's a strange kind of grief grieving a marriage while it's still technically intact. There were no fights, no slamming doors, no dramatic walkouts. Just a steady erosion, a quiet fading of the US I thought we were. And every night I lay in bed just a few feet away from the man I married, wondering how we got here, wondering if he ever really saw me or if I was just a name on his payment app. One night when sleep refused to come again, I got up and opened my laptop. I typed in the county property records, something I never thought I'd search. I entered our address, heart pounding, and there it was. His name listed right next to his mother's on the deed. Plain as day. No mention of me. No sign that I'd ever been part of anything. And the worst part, it was dated 3 months before our wedding. He owned it all along. There's something chilling about seeing it in black and white on an official document. It made it real, in a way his half-hearted words never could. While I was planning floral arrangements and worrying about seating charts, he already had a plan for property, for income, for ownership. And somehow, I wasn't part of any of it. Legally, he did nothing wrong. That's what kept echoing in my head. He didn't scam me. He didn't forge my signature. He just never told me. But there's a kind of betrayal that doesn't need to break the law to break your heart. I kept thinking, what if we divorce? What would I walk away with? I'd spent 2 years contributing to the mortgage of a property I had no legal claim to. 2 years investing emotionally, physically, financially into something that, on paper, never belonged to me. Older women, I spoke to women who'd lived through marriages and mortgages, told me the same thing. If your name's not on the deed, your name doesn't matter. That hit hard. Because I had always believed marriage was a partnership, not a contract with hidden clauses. But here I was, waking up every day in a place I thought was ours, only to learn it was his investment. I wasn't a co-owner. I wasn't even a stakeholder. I was just the silent contributor, the rent payer he called his wife. I started seeing shadows in every corner of that apartment, not ghosts but reminders. The deed had become more than paper. It was a symbol of imbalance, of omission, of a truth withheld so quietly it echoed louder than any lie. I didn't leave in a whirlwind. There was no screaming, no dramatic suitcase hurling, no storming out into the night. It happened on a Tuesday, quiet, still. I folded my clothes neatly. I packed my books in a box I'd once used for wine glasses. I took my plants, the ones I'd watered with care in a home I thought was mine, and placed them gently by the door. Brian barely looked up from his laptop. He asked, "Where are you going?" like I was running an errand. I looked him in the eye and said, "Somewhere I'm not paying rent to my husband." That was the first time I saw something flicker in his face. Not anger, not guilt, just surprise. Like he didn't actually believe I would walk away. But I did, because I realized something standing there, suitcase in one hand, keys in the other. I could stay. I could shrink myself, keep pretending it didn't hurt, keep justifying the cracks in our foundation because the rent was cheap and the bed was warm. But then I'd be choosing silence again. And I'd done enough of that. I wasn't leaving because I couldn't afford to stay. I was leaving because the cost of staying was too high, and it was being paid in pieces of who I was. When I stepped into the hallway, everything felt heavier. The quiet was different. Final. The kind that makes your chest ache even if you know you're doing the right thing. I didn't know exactly where I was going. I just knew I needed space to breathe, space that wasn't bought with my own blind trust. I didn't slam the door, I just closed it softly. Because even endings deserve dignity. People talk about the moment you fall in love, but they don't talk enough about the moment you realize love isn't enough. Not without honesty, not without respect. So I stood at the door, not just of that apartment, but of my own turning point, and I chose me. I didn't leave with anger in my heart. I left with clarity, the kind that only comes when the illusion finally lifts and you see things not how you hoped they'd be, but how they are. This story isn't about $700 a month. It's not even about a deed with one name missing. It's about trust, how fragile it is, how quietly it can be broken, and how sometimes the deepest betrayal doesn't come from strangers, but from the person who looked you in the eye and promised forever. I spent 2 years thinking I was building a life with someone, but I was only renting space in a story he'd already written without me. If you've ever had the rug pulled out from under you, if you've ever trusted someone only to realize they were keeping score behind your back, then I want you to know you're not alone. Your pain is real. And walking away doesn't mean you gave up. It means you finally chose to stand up for yourself. So, if this story hit something in you, if it made you pause, reflect, maybe even cry, then I hope you'll stay with me. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because every week I tell stories like this. Real ones, honest ones. The kind that remind us dignity doesn't live on a deed. It lives in truth. And that's something no one can take from you.